explaining their legal duties as parents of a minor child. The letter will cite specific state laws about providing food, shelter, clothing, and basic necessities. It won't force them to change their behavior, but it might make them realize they can't just kick me out or demand all my money. Boyd says the letter will be professional and factual, not threatening, but it will make clear that their actions could be considered neglect. He asks if I want him to send it, and I nod immediately. Having something official from a lawyer feels like protection I've never had before. Boyd prints out some information sheets about my rights and tells me to keep documenting everything. He also gives me his direct phone number in case things escalate quickly. The meeting ends with him promising to mail the letter within 2 days. That evening at home, I'm heating up ramen in the microwave when both my parents walk into the kitchen. They have that look on their faces again, the serious one that means they're about to corner me. Dad crosses his arms and asks if I've thought about the rent contract. I take a breath and tell them I talked to a lawyer at legal aid. Mom's face goes pale and Dad's jaw tightens. I explain that I learned parents have to provide basic necessities whether their kid pays rent or not. Dad's face turns red and he starts yelling about how I'm threatening them and trying to make them look like bad parents. His voice gets louder with each word and I can feel my heart pounding, but I keep my expression calm. Mom starts crying and saying I'm so ungrateful after they've kept a roof over my head for 15 years. She's doing that thing where she cries to make me feel guilty, but I've seen it too many times to fall for it anymore. Dad steps closer and says I'm tearing this family apart over money. I stay calm and repeat exactly what Boyd told me. I'm willing to help with chores around the house and contribute in reasonable ways, but I won't sign a contract that takes all my earnings. My voice stays steady even though my hands are shaking. I tell them I need my money for food and school supplies since they stopped providing those things years ago. Dad opens his mouth to yell again, but I just turn and walk toward my room. They're both shouting behind me about disrespect and ingratitude, but I keep walking. I hear them storm off to their bedroom and slam the door so hard the whole house shakes. I lock my bedroom door and sit on my bed with my phone, texting Mrs. Gilmore that the confrontation happened and I'm okay. She texts back immediately asking if I feel safe and I tell her yes, just shaken up. The house stays silent for the rest of the night. The next week drags by with my parents barely speaking to me. Then one afternoon I'm at the school when Boyd's letter arrives via certified mail. I know because when I get home that evening the whole house feels different. The air is thick and tense and my parents are sitting at the kitchen table with papers spread out in front of them. They don't look at me when I walk in. They don't say anything. I grab a snack from the limited supplies I can reach and go straight to my room. The silence is worse than yelling somehow. At dinner time, which I usually skip anyway, I hear them talking in low angry voices but I can't make out the words. This goes on for days with them treating me like I'm invisible, while also watching my every move. Mrs. Gilmore starts checking in with me every single day during lunch period. She pulls me into her office and we work on setting up a realistic schedule that balances school, work, and study time. My grades have been dropping because I'm too exhausted and stressed to focus on homework. She emails my teachers explaining that I'm dealing with family issues and helps me get extensions on missing assignments. We map out which classes need the most attention and when I can use free periods to catch up. She also connects me with the school's homework help program, where I can get tutoring for free. Mrs. Gilmore makes a spreadsheet of my entire week showing school hours, work shifts, study blocks, and even time for sleep. Seeing it all laid out makes me realize how much I've been trying to handle alone. She prints 2 copies, one for me and one she keeps in case we need to adjust things. My neighbor Eliana notices I'm bringing my lawn equipment to her garage more often than usual. One afternoon when I'm storing my mower and trimmer, she comes outside and asks if everything's okay at home. I give her a vague answer about my parents being stressed about money. Eliana looks at me for a long moment like she's deciding whether to push for more information. She doesn't push, but her expression tells me she understands more than I'm saying. She mentions that her garage has plenty of room if I want to keep all my equipment there permanently, instead of just sometimes. I thank her and accept the offer, grateful to have my expensive tools somewhere my parents can't mess with them. The next week, Eliana starts offering me more consistent work. She asks if I can mow her lawn every week instead of every other week, and if I can help with some garden maintenance too. She pays me upfront for the whole month, which helps me budget better and feel less panicked about money. While I'm working in her yard one Saturday, she brings out lemonade and casually mentions that her guest room is available if I ever need a place to stay. She says it in this light way like she's just making conversation, but her eyes are serious. I tell her thank you and that I really appreciate it. Having that option in the back of my mind makes me feel less trapped. At home, things get worse in sneaky ways. My parents install a lock on the pantry door and start counting every item in the fridge. They don't technically deny me food completely, but they make it clear what I'm allowed to touch. There are certain shelves in the fridge that are off limits, and the pantry is locked except when they're home to supervise. It's their way of controlling what I eat without breaking any obvious rules. I come home from work starving and find the pantry locked with a note saying they'll be home at 8. Meanwhile, I can smell their leftover Chinese food in the fridge, but I know I'm not allowed to touch it. I start documenting everything on my phone just like Boyd told me to. I take photos of the locked pantry with timestamps. I photograph the empty cabinets that I'm allowed to access, showing there's basically nothing there. When my parents order takeout, I take pictures of the bags and containers in the trash, then photos of my own dinner, which is usually peanut butter on bread or plain pasta. I screenshot our bank statements showing their restaurant charges. Every piece of evidence gets saved in a folder on my phone and backed up to a cloud account they can't access. Boyd said evidence matters if things escalate to court or child services. I never thought I'd be building a case against my own parents, but here I am taking photos in my own kitchen like I'm collecting proof of a crime. The next shift at the grocery store, Christian stops by my register during a slow period and leans against the counter. He watches me scan my usual lunch items, which are the cheapest things in the store, and then looks at me with this expression that isn't pity, but something closer to understanding. He mentions they have openings for more hours if I'm interested, and the pay would help with whatever I'm dealing with. I accept immediately because more stable income means less panic about making rent money or affording food. He tells me to stop by his office after my shift to fill out the paperwork, and I thank him while bagging my crackers and peanut butter. I fill out the forms that same afternoon, and Christian helps me get my work permit updated to allow more hours since I'm still 15. The new schedule starts the following week with 3 weekday evenings and full shifts on weekends, which means real money coming in regularly. But it also means less time for homework, and I'm already behind in 2 classes from all the stress at home. Miss Gilmore notices when I fall asleep during study hall and pulls me aside to ask what's going on. I explain about the increased work hours, and she doesn't lecture me about priorities or tell me to quit my job like some adults would. Instead, she helps me map out a study schedule that uses every free period and lunch break to catch up on assignments. She even talks to my teachers about extensions on some projects, so I'm not drowning in late work. 3 days later, I come home from an evening shift and find Dad waiting in the driveway with his arms crossed. He starts yelling before I even get out of my car about how he heard I'm getting free lunch at the school now. Someone from church must have seen my name on a list or something because he knows details I never told him. He says I'm making them look like deadbeats who can't even feed their own kid, and that I'm embarrassing the whole family with my poverty act. I try to walk past him toward the house, but he blocks my path and keeps going about how people at church are probably gossiping about what terrible parents they must be. His voice gets louder with each sentence, and I notice Eliana's porch light turn on across the street. She comes outside and just stands there on her porch watching us with her arms folded. Dad notices her standing there, and his voice drops to an angry whisper, but I can see his jaw clenching and his fists tight at his sides. He tells me this conversation isn't over, and storms back inside, slamming the door hard enough that the windows rattle. The following weekend, I come home from mowing lawns to find my equipment sitting in the middle of the yard, completely soaked from the rainstorm that came through that morning. My parents swear they didn't know it was going to rain, and that they needed to get the car out of the garage for errands. But my mower won't start, and when I check the engine, I can see water damage that's going to cost more to fix than the mower is worth. I sit on the wet grass, staring at my ruined equipment and feeling like I might actually cry for the first time in months. This mower represented half my business, and replacing it will take weeks of saving. Eliana comes over an hour later and finds me still sitting there trying to figure out what to do. She looks at the destroyed mower and then at my parents' car parked in the driveway, and doesn't ask any questions about how this happened. She tells me to bring all my equipment to her garage right now, and that I can store everything there permanently, so this never happens again. I load up my trimmer and remaining tools and follow her across the street, feeling grateful that at least one adult in my life actually helps instead of sabotaging me. Back at work, Christian calls me into his office and offers me a permanent part-time position with set hours every week and a small raise. The stability means I can actually plan my budget instead of scrambling for irregular yard work money. I can count on a specific amount each paycheck and know exactly what I'll have for food and supplies. He also mentions that employee discounts apply to groceries, which will stretch my food money even further. That same week, I'm organizing my room when I notice Dad's been going through my things. My bank statements are out of order and there are fingerprints on papers I keep in my desk drawer. I confront him about it and he acts like it's his right to know what I'm doing with my money since I live in his house. Boyd's voice echoes in my head about keeping my finances separate, so I go online and open a prepaid debit card account that only I can access. I transfer most of my savings and set up direct deposit from work, so my parents can't track my income anymore. Boyd said documentation matters, and this is one more layer of protection. Sunday morning at church, someone apparently asks Dad directly about the rent situation, because he comes home absolutely furious about people gossiping about our private business. He slams things around the kitchen while Mom sits at the table looking embarrassed and won't make eye contact with anyone. She keeps saying they should never have mentioned anything to anyone, but Dad insists they didn't say a word, which means someone else is talking. I stay in my room and listen to them argue about who might have found out and how to handle the rumors now spreading through their social circle. Missy Gilmore schedules a mediation meeting at the school the following Wednesday with my parents, herself, and a social worker from the district. We all sit around a conference table and the social worker explains that she's there to help us reach an agreement that works for everyone. My parents immediately launch into complaints about how disrespectful I've been and how I refuse to help the family during hard times. Dad brings up every perceived slight from the past month, while Mom nods along adding her own examples. The social worker listens patiently and then redirects by asking what specific support my parents currently provide. The room gets quiet as they struggle to list actual things they pay for beyond the roof over my head. The social worker asks about food access, clothing, school supplies, and my parents give vague answers about teaching responsibility. She asks me directly what I purchased for myself, and I list everything while my parents sit there looking uncomfortable. After an hour of back and forth, we reach a temporary agreement where I won't pay rent for now, but I'll do more chores around the house to contribute. The social worker writes everything down in detail, including which chores, how often, and what my parents agree to provide in return. She prints copies for all of us and explains this is a working agreement we'll revisit in a month. My parents sign it looking annoyed but cooperative, and I take my copy knowing this piece of paper gives me something